Hello, everyone. G'day, Craig. Hello, Kay. Craig, you win today. Rob and Deb, hello. How are you? Good to see you. I'm feeling a bit windswept and interesting today, so you'll have to excuse that. It's such a weird day. It's kind of sunny but cold, wind, and anyway, I'm glad to be inside. I got a picture from Karen. They're staying inside as well. Hello, Peter and Karen. Good to see you. Hello, Rob and Deb. I'm very excited about this wine as well. I think my glasses are absolutely filthy too. So anyway, I'm just going to have to deal with it. It's been a big day. How is everyone? Hello, James. How are you going? Oh, school formal tonight. How excellent. It's nice to see you. Anyway, I'm hoping to get up to Queensland in May. So watch this space. Hello, Cotty and John. Good to see you. Sam and Paul and Fam. Good to see you guys. How lovely! It's feeling very autumnal here, and I think that on a cool, sunny autumn evening, what better thing to drink than the old Pinot Noir from the Robinson vineyard? I hope you've all got some yummy snacks. I feel like I'm being a little bit slack with my snack recommendations at the moment, but I think with a wine like this, you need to sort of go classic. Hello, Sarah. How is all of the Tricks family? Good to see you. We've got a nice, everyone's middle of winter there. See, has it stopped raining yet, Craig? It sounds horrendous. Okay, grilled pork scotch, blueberry sauce. Oh, yum, mashed potato. That's how you've gone full winter roasty dinner. That sounds fantastic. We've got a little group today. I think life is starting to impinge for some people. Hello, Shell. How are you and Andrew? Good to see you. I hope you all appreciated Craig's beautiful picture on the mail out today, Craig and his gorgeous dog. That was nice to show. Hello, Jeff. Oh, you're at Rob and Deb's as well. How lovely. I hope that Nigel managed to drop the wine off in time because he was on his way through at the end of the day here. So I hope that all got there. Everyone's just coming in slowly. Nice to see you all. Well, shall we get started? You probably already have. I find that most of the time you guys have cracked on. So 2015 Robinson Pinot. I don't think we've drunk this together before, have we? There's a few that we've. No, now it's cold as well. Cold and rainy. Fried camembert chicken sandwiches. Perfect. Hello, Nigel. Good work. You got home. Linda, Steve, Susie, and Harry. Lovely to see you. Welcome. Roasted chicken, potatoes, and duck fat, random oysters. Fantastic, Samantha. The oysters will probably be challenging with the Pinot Noir, but the chicken and potatoes will be delicious. Emily, lovely to see you again. Sorry Kevin can't be there, but great to see you. We missed you last week. We actually featured the mezcal in Oaxaca Old Fashioned, but we'll do a special proper feature on the mezcal one day soon. Okay, Pinot Noir. I did bring a little bit of show and tell today because we got given some glasses by some friends, and I think it's one of those really interesting things. I don't know. Hello, Alison and Andrew. Lovely to see you. Great to see you. So I'm going to be using my regular Pinot Noir glass tonight. No surprises there. Thank you, Kay. I knew that someone would have been taking note, and I'm glad to see that it was you. We haven't done the Robinson 2015. That's all right, Emily. Life gets busy, and I don't expect people to be here every week. And I hope the MSO concert was lovely. That sounds like a great thing to do. But yeah, we got given some of these recently. These are stemless Pinot glasses, and they're pretty groovy. The only problem is that because the Pinot glass is such a bulbous glass, they're brand new, see they put their sticker on them still. Because the Pinot glass is such a bulbous glass, you need to have a reasonably big hand to be able to hold them. And I always worry with these that it's going to slip through my fingers because I don't have because it's quite big. Also, you get fingerprints on the glass, which if you're eating pizza, but they do look nice, don't they, Pete? How are you? Look, everyone's coming in now. That's nice to see. So we might the other reason that the stemless glass can be slightly tricky. Okay, that's right. I have another friend who's finding holding on to big glasses a bit harder. Hello, Maureen and Keely, lovely to see you. Zach, Jack, and Hannah are here. Awesome, very good. I'm just for those of you who've just popped in, I'm just showing off these sexy little stemless glasses that we were given the other day, and talking about whether we like them or not. I think they're fun. They're great at picnics. They're great at the beach, or if you're just putting them on the ground, they're much more stable than something like that. You're not going to snap the stem on them when you're washing them either, but they do get fingerprints on them. And if it's a warm day, then holding onto your glass like this is going to warm up the wine a lot faster. So that's the other thing to take into account if you're using stemless glasses. Anyway, tonight I'm not going to use a stemless glass. I'm going to put that back away, but I thought I'd show it off because I think they're pretty cute. And let's get into the wine. So Zach and Jack, not as much theatre, but close to the wine. Absolutely. Hello, Sue and Daryl. Lovely to see you. Cotty, we also use, we have some stemless glasses, stemless Chardonnay glasses, I think they are, that we use for water here. And they're nice for gin and tonics too. And in fact, I reckon those will be even better for a gin and tonic than the little narrow ones, because you can fit a big ice block in there. So we might have a bit of a play with that. All right, let's get cracking. As I was saying, we haven't drunk this wine together before. 2015 Robinson Pinot Noir. There we go. So let's get it open and see how it's looking. It's a good sound, isn't it? So 2015. Beautiful colour. Well, you didn't think I'd send you something horrible, did you? People are saying it's awesome and amazing, and I agree. Look, one of the things when we're trying to come up with another selection of wines for this Drinks with Kate, we can't obviously do the same thing over and over again, and we do come back and revisit some wines on a semi-regular basis and try and look at them with different foods and that kind of thing. But when you get a wine like this, 2015 was a beautiful vintage. It was, it was one of those vintages where everything went right. Shell is saying it's going perfectly with everything that they're eating. Tell me, Shell, I know what hummus is, pea spread with marinated feta and labneh, but I don't know what humara is. Humara. Can you explain? This is correct, Craig. It is a spicy wine. So 2015 was a beautiful vintage. It was not too hot, not too cold. We got rain at the right time. We had beautiful sunny weather during flowering and fruit set, so there was no issues with the fruit not the vines not flowering and setting fruit properly. So everything did what it was supposed to do when it was supposed to do it, which those sort of years don't happen all the time. And when they do, you just kind of go, well, thank you very much, Mother Nature. Let's try not to stuff it up in the winery. Let's see if we can get things. It's a bit warm now. I can't get my temperature right. Excuse me for a moment while I take my jacket off. That's better. I've got my Wild G's t-shirt on too, so I might as well show that off. Yeah, so a beautiful, beautiful vintage. Really happy with how things looked. And when the wine was bottled and first released, it looked really pure, really juicy, really perfumed, really fine. And it's one of those years that people sort of went, oh yeah, I think the Robinson's a little bit a bit simpler than the McIntyre Pinot, which I think is incorrect. It's not simpler. It's just it has this incredible line and finesse to it that when it's young, it just kind of all blends into itself and does look very pure fruited and very, very, very linear in its style. But with age, 2015, it's 7 years old now. It's a perfect time to be drinking it. And that 7 years has given it a chance to sort of settle down, for the fruit to kind of just settle down a little bit so that it's not the most forward thing. There's still that beautiful rose petal aromatic. But as Craig was mentioning, it's quite spicy. Oh, Muhammara is roasted capsicum, tomato, and garlic. Two times blended with walnuts. Pan-fried tomato paste. Yum, that sounds delicious. Sounds very good. So like a sort of, is it a dip or is it, sounds beautiful. I think that's a great hot tip as well, Sharon. It's one of the things that I was going to play around with a future wine with another Pinot. Excellent. Another Pinot, I was going to put forward some Middle Eastern flavours to match with the wine, because I do think often our Pinot has some sort of Middle Eastern kind of characters to it as well. So what I mean by that, particularly in a year like 2015, in the cooler years, we get sort of more Asian spice, a bit of soy, some star anise. In the warmer years, like 2015, it wasn't too hot, but it wasn't too cold. It was just lovely and warm and even all the way through the season. We get this lovely. You do get that sort of cumin, coriander, sort of toasted Moroccan spice character to the wine. You also get a little bit of pomegranate molasses, I think, in this wine. It's got this sort of lifted, slightly pomegranate-y kind of a character to it, which I think obviously is used a lot in Middle Eastern cooking and makes this wine work really well with those flavours. Chickpeas as a base, also amazing with Pinot, and a lot of people have a dislike of chickpeas because they've had a bad experience with it. Pomegranate molasses in the Muhammara as well, of course. But chickpeas, I think, when you build flavours around them, work very well with this wine because they have that earthy kind of character to them as well. And this wine has a little, being 7 years old, it's developed a little sort of earthy, it's quite sweet earth. It's like when you're digging in a beautiful vegetable garden and the earth is healthy and it's damp, and you turn it over and you get that lovely kind of earthy sweet smell coming up from the ground. I get that almost always with the Robinson when it's got some age on it, and particularly with this 2015. So it's a really lovely, it's a lovely layered wine now. No longer is it just that sort of pure fruit-driven style that it was when it was a baby, but with that extra cellaring, it's sort of pulled all of the characters, have kind of pulled apart a little bit, so you can see them more. You can see that perfume. You can see the fruit that's softening. You can see sort of the earthy, slightly mushroomy notes coming through, and those spicy notes and the top notes as well, which are really lovely. I haven't even put it in my mouth yet. I'm just smelling it. It's one of those wines. Every now and again, I get a wine that I just think, if I could find a perfume that smelled this delicious, I'd just kind of pop it on. It doesn't work with wine. I've tried it. You just end up smelling like a wino at the end of the day. But these wines like these sort of Pinot Noirs are so perfumed that it would be, really a wonderful sort of aroma profile to try and copy in a perfume. Rob and Deb grew their first pomegranate this year. Well done. Yeah, a little bit more of the Pinot will work very well with a pomegranate-y chickpea salad or some dips or whatever. James is asking, what's the oldest Robinson that I've tried? Well, the Robinson story goes back to Robinson Pinot Noir as a single vineyard wine goes back to 2008. We had been buying a bit of fruit from Hugh. Sorry, I can't see you guys at all. Excuse me for a moment. I'm just going to clean my glasses while I keep talking. We were buying fruit from the Robinsons before then, but in 2008, Dad, for the first time, thought, well, let's bottle this as a separate wine because the fruit character is quite different from the fruit character of the fruit from the McIntyre vineyard. And so that was when we started making individual vineyard wines for the first time. And in 2008 and 2009, we made the single vineyard wines, but they were sold at cellar door. They were sort of experimental wines at that stage. And I think some of the vines that we were getting fruit from were quite young. Good work, Zach. Swirling a little too vigorously. And don't worry, this is a problem. It's one of the reasons that I don't put any more wine in my glass than that, and that's probably a little bit too much. Because when you get swirling, then it's much better. I can actually see through my glasses now, so that's nice. I'm sure you're all very pleased for me. But yes, it's very easy to end up wearing the wine. I have to be extra careful because I'm always paranoid about throwing wine on my computer. And then that's going to be a real problem. Hello, Polly. Polly's back from her walk, and she's looking very pleased with herself. She needs a bath. Oops. Oh, positively Burgundian. Okay, so Rob, I want to unpack that a little bit because it's one of those. It's really interesting, this whole comparing Australian Pinot Noir to Burgundy, and we get a little kind of twitchy about it sometimes, and I thought it probably would be a good thing to talk about. I don't think I really fully answered your question though, James. You were asking me about what the oldest Robinson I've tried. So I've tried back to 08, obviously, but I think that they started getting exciting and interesting from 2010. And we have a little bit of the 2010 still. We have some 11, which is that very strange vintage. It's quite light in colour. It's very elegant wine. And we're a bit worried that the 11 might be falling apart slowly at the moment. So I will be tasting that again. If it's still looking good, we might pop that into one of the future boxes because it's a really fun, interesting wine to taste. 2013 and 2015, both really good Mornington Peninsula vintages, was the question from Nareem. And I think to my mind, the 2013 from here was it was a slightly warmer vintage for us. The wine was a little bit chunkier and a bit sort of darker fruited. I think this 2015, also a lovely vintage, but just slightly, it was still very sunny, but slightly cooler than 2013 at this site, at the Robinson site and at the McIntyre site. And the result was wines that were just a little more restrained, but also a little purer. So I actually like the 15s. I think I've always liked the 15s a little bit more than the 13s. They're both good. I think the 15s are, to my mind, from Moorooduc Estate, the 15s are better than the 13s. But it's a very personal experience. So coming back now to Rob's comment about Burgundy, because Craig's come back saying he thinks it's more spicy than a Burgundy, but just as good, if not better. So we purposefully don't compare our wines when we're talking about them to people with Burgundy, because it's something that a lot of people do. It's not wrong, because I think, compare and contrast is always interesting. But I think that a lot of people in Australia who started trying to make Pinot Noir seriously in the 1980s and 90s and noughties, started trying to define the wine by how like Burgundy it was or is. And it started, sometimes the comments were a bit ridiculous because so many different Burgundies have very different qualities. Oh, there you go, Sam. It's quite nice with oysters. Fantastic. I'm glad it's working for you. But here's the problem, that a lot of people hold Burgundy up on a pedestal, and they will say to anyone who says, oh, you know, this wine is more Burgundian than it is Australian. What does that mean? Is that to say this is almost as good as Burgundy and it's better than most Australian wines? And that's what a lot of people meant when they were saying that kind of thing. I think now, today, when we've been making Pinot Noir from these sites for the Robinson since 2008, and for the McIntyre wines for longer than that. But let's just look back to about that time, because I think at the same time that we started making single vineyard wine from the Robinson fruit that we were getting, we also had done a lot of work on the Pinot Noir that we had planted in the McIntyre vineyard, and improved the variety of clones that we had. We had sort of we had some age on those vines, so they were producing mature vine quality fruit. So the quality of the fruit that we were getting off these vineyards was much better than it was in the very early days of us growing Pinot Noir, because we planted the wrong clones and the vines were young, and we didn't really yet know how the fruit was going to react in the circumstances that we had. So getting used to a site, getting used to the clones, getting used to the variety and how we wanted to make it took some time. I think that Moorooduc Estate from sort of 2010 moving forward is sort of the modern phase of Moorooduc Estate Pinot Noir, and you taste the Robinsons, you taste the McIntyres, you taste the garden vineyard wines. So we have the 3 single vineyard wines most years from 2010 onwards. And also the estate level wine changed because we changed our policy about originally the Moorooduc Estate wine was just McIntyre fruit as well as the Moorooduc McIntyre. So we sort of had rearranged our thinking and come to a conclusion about how we wanted to do things here at Moorooduc by 2010. I'm not saying that we weren't sort of there before that, but if you look at 2010 on, that last 12 years has been, I think, a big step up for Moorooduc Pinot Noir particularly, but also I think our Chardonnay's evolved as well in that time. Craig is saying that our wine's different to Kooyong and other Mornington Peninsula wines. And I think that has, so it's really interesting. I think that has a lot to do with, thank you, Rob. I think that the fact that our Pinot is different from Kooyong, is different from Paringa, is different from 10 Minutes by Tractor, is different from Yabby Lake, which is amazingly close to here. It's partly to do with vineyard site. It's partly to do with the percentage of different clones that everybody has planted, because everyone has different percentages of different clones, and whether you blend them together or whether you keep them separate. And also, what did I say first? Terroir, so site, so the soil, the aspect of the vineyard, all that kind of, the age of the vines is really important. And I think that, Craig, one of the things that we have in our favour here at Moorooduc, and with the Robinson fruit as well, is that the vines that we are sourcing our Pinot Noir fruit from now have got significant age. They've been in the ground for a few decades now, sort of 20 to 30 years. So they're some of the older of the modern Pinot Noir plantings in the Mornington Peninsula, if that makes sense. but it's also then winemaker philosophy, and that comes down to at what level of ripeness the winemaker wants the fruit to be. So when is it picked? It's about whether the winemaker wants to do some whole bunch fermentation, and if they do, how much and how they handle that, whether they mix the whole bunches in with the destemmed fruit, or whether they do whole bunch separately from destemmed ferments and then blend them together later. It's about fermentation vessels. We have our stainless steel fermentation vessels, which we really like. We chill our fruit down a little bit to start off with. Not everybody does that. And we use natural yeasts, wild yeasts. Not everybody does that. And we think that helps to differentiate our wine from anybody else's, because not only are the grapes grown on the site, but the yeasts are the yeasts that exist with the grapes on the vineyard and in the winery. So those things we think are really important for the individuality of our wine. And then because we have fruit that we source from the McIntyre vineyard, and we have fruit that we source from the Robinson vineyard, and we have fruit that we source from the Garden vineyard, we don't just kind of lump all of the Robinson fruit in together and ferment it together. We keep the clones separate, and we keep the different parcels of fruit from different areas of the Robinson vineyard separate. So we're doing lots of little ferment batches and keeping them separate for a long time, really, and doing our final blends very soon before we are actually bottling the wine, because it gives us the longest amount of time to decide where the quality is, where the typicity for each of the single vineyard wines is in the different batches, and what we finally want to create. It's also about how much new oak we use. Other people will use different levels of new oak, but really, in a broad sense, Pinot Noir winemaking is very similar across the peninsula, but all of the little decisions that everybody makes everybody's wine different. So Craig is asking, does Burgundy use wild yeast? Some people in Burgundy use wild yeast. Some people in Burgundy buy yeast from the laboratory. So it's not a rule either way. There's probably more use of natural yeast in Burgundy because it's what they've always done. Whereas in Australia, laboratory yeast was very much the thing when we first planted the vineyard here at Moorooduc in the early 80s. That was how everyone in Australia made wine. They'd pick the grapes and they'd kill off all the natural bugs with a dose of sulfur, and then add in a laboratory bought yeast that they knew exactly what was going to do. And in fact, a lot of people thought that one of the things that people learnt when they went back to Burgundy to do a vintage or to visit winemakers was that a lot of people in Burgundy use natural ferments, use natural yeast rather than buying yeasts in, and they believed that that was part of the terroir, part of the character of their vineyard. And Dad was one of the first people to seriously play around with wild ferments here in Australia, and we had a lot of people saying to us, asking us whether we thought it was a terribly risky thing to do. And I had a winemaker friend who's also a master of wine who'd had a bit of a play with wild yeast ferments in the Yarra Valley, and he wasn't happy with the results. But in talking to him about that, I think that he panicked at the early stages of the fermentation. And with wild ferments, you tend to get quite funky characters coming off the wine early on. You get aldehydes and smells that winemakers who have trained at Roseworthy or UC Davis have learnt are faults and that you need to avoid at all costs. We discovered that if you just kind of let the ferment keep going, then those aldehydes and those weird smells disappear and resolve, and the wine actually fixes itself. So you have to have a little bit of faith that it's going to work out. And and hold your nerve with wild ferments. So when Dad started out, it was very much the belief in Australia that yes, they do wild ferments in Burgundy and in Europe, but we've probably got different yeasts here in Australia, and it's not a safe thing to do. Because we were small and because Dad thought it was worth the risk, he did some small batch ferments with wild yeast first of all, and we did the tasting of the wines that were made with wild yeast and with inoculated yeast, and the wines fermented with wild yeast always were a bit more savoury, a bit less fruity, but more complex, more textural, really interesting compared to the wine that was made with inoculated yeast, which was a bit more fruit forward, but a bit simpler and a bit less textural and a bit less interesting. So it was a really easy decision for us to make to convert to using all wild yeast. So new Moorooduc t-shirt, wild yeast, funky characters. I don't think that's going to really help people, Craig. Lots of people get upset about the wild yeast t-shirt as it is with wild yeast. I think if we put funky characters, that might freak them out a little bit more. Now, there are questions that I'm not answering. Alison, is there some for sale? Alison, we have small quantities of this wine, but for wine club members, we will be able to make the occasional bottles available for sale. So I don't think it's on the members website yet, but Jeff and I will have a look at stock either tomorrow or early next week, and we'll put out a little offer for you next week on that. So yes, there'll be a little bit that you can purchase. Emily wants to know what are the sizes of the various Moorooduc vineyards. I hate it when people ask me that question because I'm not very good at answering it. Moorooduc Estate Derrill Road Vineyard is about 4.5 hectares. I'm getting nods from Richard. Richard's prompting me from the other table. When we replant so also remembering that we've pulled out about 1/2 hectare of vines at the front of the property that were the Cabernet vines that were grafted over to Pinot Noir. When that gets replanted, then it will be about 5 hectares here. The Robinson vineyard's much bigger, but we don't take fruit from the whole Robinson vineyard. So I think when we try and work it out, it's probably about the same size portion of the Robinson vineyard. So maybe another 4 hectares of land from the Robinson vineyard. I'm getting sort of nods. Yeah, 3, 4. We're not sure. Maybe a bit more than that, 4 or 5 hectares, something like that from the Robinson vineyard. The garden vineyard's a bit smaller. It's about 2 hectares, 2.5 hectares. Let's say 2. I hope you're adding these all up. And then we've got the Osborne Vineyard, which mostly provides fruit for the Devilbean Creek range. And we also have Duns Creek, which is a little bit further south from here. We take fruit from there as well. And I'm not even sure how big that is, but that's 8 acres. So I don't know how many hectares that is. I'm not very good at converting, particularly when I'm drinking a glass of Pinot Noir. So I hope that answers that question, Emily. So all of the vineyards are small except for the Robinson Vineyard, but the Robinson Vineyard's kind of the way we work with the Robinson Vineyard is that we lease that portion of the vines of the vineyard. So we get fruit from the same vines every year, and we work with the same vines every year, and the viticulture's sort of in keeping with what we want to do there as well. But yeah, Emily, sometimes most of the parcels of fruit will be sort of between 1 and 2 tons of maybe one clone. We might have a bit more. So each of our fermenters holds they're 2-ton fermenters, so they can hold up to 2 tons of fruit. But sometimes they're a bit smaller than that. We've got some littler fermenters to do little batches in as well. So they're pretty small batches of wine that we keep separate. And then, of course, once they're fermented, we press them off and they go to barrel. And then you've got even smaller parcels of fruit in each barrel, because each barrel develops slightly differently from its neighbour. So it's quite a complicated situation, but it's the only way that we would like to make wine, because it gives us so many options about blending and working out what's going on. Cotty was saying that her dad from Hungary thought it was outrageous that Australian winemakers added yeast, and that John was mad adding yeast to his homemade wine. Adding yeast means that you know what the yeast is going to do, whereas if you rely on wild yeast, it won't be just one strain of yeast. It's usually a whole lot of different strains of yeast, and they kind of pop in and pop out of the ferment when the situation is optimal for them. So you'll get one guy who starts it off and then dies, and then another guy will keep it going for a little bit more, and then they'll die, and then someone else takes it up. So wild yeast fermentation is really a bit of a team sport. You need to give them a bit of time to build up their muscles and build up their mass in the ferment before you get it started, which is why we cool things down a little bit. Peter, Karen are asking, how do you know how much sulfur to use so you don't kill off the wild yeast? The lucky thing is that the sulfur, the yeast that we want to ferment our wine, is fairly tolerant of sulfur, whereas the dodgy yeasts that we don't want to be involved in the ferment, like Brettanomyces and things like that, are quite sensitive to sulfur. So giving a smallish sulfur dose early on will just knock out the dodgy bugs and help the yeast that we want to do the job build up their numbers and be happy. So it's one of the things that you learn as a winemaker, and I actually don't get involved in making those calculations. So Rich and Jeremy are in charge of that, and I trust them to do the right thing. And they seem to get it right because the ferments happen very nicely. Hello, Frodo. I've got a big black dog come to say hello to me. Hello, Darwin. I'm talking to my friends here. What else? Also, would Burgundy have extra good strains of yeast? I think probably. We haven't ever had our yeasts analysed to see what the strains are and what the. Let's show you who's talking to me down here. There we go. Two poodles. Good dogs. Yeah. So the strains of yeast that we have here, we don't know if they're the same or different from what they have in Burgundy, but they do the same thing. I reckon they're probably pretty much the same. But I don't think that Burgundy necessarily has extra good strains of yeast. I think it's just does the job pretty amazingly. That said, you might have some people who disagree with me, and I've just noticed that Samantha's talking about the wild yeast for sourdough making in San Francisco, and I think again, people talk about San Francisco sourdough, but I think that the sourdoughs that I've had from other places in the world are just as delicious. Maybe there's a little bit of difference, but I'm not sure if I'm good enough to be able to differentiate. So it's a good discussion to have, and I probably don't have enough information at hand to be able to really go deep with it. But that's okay. What else? Okay. Craig, yeah, good, excellent. Jeff, you do say some funny things. Paprika is probably not a good thing to be seeing on wine. Are you sure you're not having paprika in your dip? It's spicy, but I wouldn't call it paprika personally, because that gives it's one of those funny things that to a certain extent there are no wrong things to say about wine, but for a wine maker or someone who spends their whole life talking about wine aromas and smells, paprika is a type of red pepper. I know it's dried, so it's different from capsicum, but the smell of capsicum in Pinot Noir, is red or green, is a suggestion that the wine is underripe and not very nice. So I think that the wine has a spiciness, but I think it's more it's more about, as I said before, there's some cumin, there's some coriander, there's a little bit of a saffron note even there. I think those kind of lifted, they're not quite as spicy as paprika, but they do quite similar things as far as lifting the aromas and flavours. Rob and or Deb has said that they're stunned by the length of the finish. And I think that is the sign of a really beautiful wine. And this is what I love about this Pinot Noir, is that, and what we talk about when we're talking about the finish, for anyone who's like, what are they talking about? You take a sip of the wine and you swallow it, and then you have a conversation, as I am right now, and the flavour just stays in your mouth. And it's one of those wonderful things that for me, it's one of the awesome things about drinking delicious wine, because while you're talking to someone, you're also getting that sensation of the flavour of the wine still going on and on in your mouth, and it changes a little bit in your mouth, and it sort of, you get those lovely spicy, there's almost a sort of a raspberry fruit there coming through on the palate. Peter, don't be mean. Peter, you're being naughty. And I can't remember what I was saying, but anyway, that length, that flavour going on and on in your mouth is one of the really special things about delicious wine. And it means that you always should slow down when you're drinking nice wine, because if you drink it too fast, then you don't get a chance to experience that finish and that sort of after flavour of the wine after it's left. Alison, capsicum on other wines. So Pinot Noir, you don't want to see capsicum in Pinot Noir. Cabernet, on the other hand, can have a little bit of capsicum character in it, because that's an aromatic that is very typical of the Cabernet varieties, particularly when grown in a cool climate. If there's too much capsicum, then it's also suggesting that your Cabernet is a little underripe. But if there's just a little hint of capsicum there with other aromas and flavours, then that can be quite lovely. The other grape variety that you see capsicum in a lot is Sauvignon Blanc, particularly from a cool climate. And Sauvignon Blanc is it's a white variety, but closely related to Cabernet Sauvignon. And they have quite a similar aroma profile and flavour profile to a certain extent. I'm also wondering, Jeff, if if someone suggested in the room paprika, you might have been noticing that as well as the fruit, the warmth of the alcohol hangs around in the mouth and makes your mouth feel slightly warm, and that might be also what's making you think of that a little bit. But if you're tasting paprika, that's great. Maybe I think what I'm saying is, if you're talking to someone else about it and you said, "Oh, this wine tastes like paprika," they probably go, "Oh, yuck, that sounds disgusting." So you've got to try and think of a more, if you're enjoying the wine, that is, and you think that little note is appealing, it's finding a word that communicates that to other people who like drinking wine. So it's okay. If I think there's a lot of spice in there. So if you're smelling sweet paprika, then you're smelling sweet paprika. Maybe don't try and sell the wine on the sweet paprika though. The spices are coming down and the fruit's coming through. That's a good question, Kay. I'm wondering what they're eating, because often food will change the flavour of the wine and will bring different things forward. But shall spoil with the Moorooduc Pinot Noir. You are, and I think that I think it's really lovely to spoil you with these wines sometimes. I mean, I just got a message from YouTube that I got a message from YouTube that our channel is 2 years old now. It's had a birthday. So that means that we've been doing this for officially for 2 years. And I had a look back, and the first Drinks with Kate, and if you want to have a real laugh, have a look back, go back through the YouTube channels and have a look at the first Drinks with Kate. I might send you a link to it next week. It's pretty funny. It's quite short. We seem to have dragged things out a lot more these days. It went for about 15 minutes, and I was kind of going, I don't really know what else to say towards the end of it. So I feel like we've kind of settled into our rhythm a little bit more. Duck salami, truffle manchego, olive bread, and roast chicken. How delightful! Well, that's okay. Little bit of spice, all sorts of things. I think it's maybe the heat from the alcohol. It's kind of you get that kind of warmth in the mouth afterwards. So that's right, Kay. I think it is the salami. Salami often has a bit of paprika in there, bit of different spices. So maybe they're just kind of interacting with each other. It's one of the cool alchemies of wine and food, and particularly a complex wine like this is going to do really cool things with different types of foods. But beware the salami and the sausage, because salamis and sausages always have strong spices in them. It'll be chili, it'll be paprika, it'll be sometimes fennel, and all of those things, and they're delicious, but they will sort of pull different aromas and flavors out of the wine. So good detective work, Kay. Thank you. Yes, go back and watch the early ones. You'll have a giggle at least, and you'll yes, it's pretty funny. Anyway, enough said. Yeah, I'll send you all the link next Monday. I'll send you the link of the very first one. So if you don't have time to go chasing back trying to find it, then it won't be a problem. Mint went well with the wine. Oh, Shell, how lovely. Well, anyway, I do think whatever you're seeing in this wine, how it's going with your food, I think it's great. It is a wine that can cope with lots of different foods. So even if you do put a bit of spice with it, it stands up to it pretty well, brings the fruit forward a little bit more. We were so much younger then, weren't we? Absolutely. It is a wine that can cope with a little bit of spice. It's a wine that can cope with lots of different flavors, but because it's so complex and subtle, I like it just by itself. So, don't be afraid to just have a little glass of wine before you start eating the food and see how it expresses itself. Samantha, the first ever box again. That would be lovely. We actually tried to do that at the beginning of last year when we thought, we might not be doing this for much longer. So, and in fact, we don't have all the wines anymore. So, so we will have to have a look at that. But I'll see what I can come up with. We'll definitely have to celebrate a few of the wines that we can access still. We might have to have a little celebratory two-year birthday box next time around. Good on you, Emily, drinking it without food. It's it does all right. Okay, team. We're nearly at the 50-minute mark, and while I'm very much enjoying our conversation, and Craig, I'm glad that it's going well with pork. I think this one works really well with all sorts of proteins. And did anyone go with the mushrooms? I didn't see any mushroom sliders coming up, but yeah. Oh, does that mean that you starve until he gets back, Emily, or are you just going to have some toast and baked beans for dinner later? Oh dear. Well, on that note, next week we have very good. Next week we have the beginning of one of our good one, Shell. Happy anniversary and cheers, everyone. Thank you. Love you too. It's been great. Now, for most of you, you know the drill for next week. We're going to taste 2 wines, so you need to bring an empty half bottle with you so that the Italian wine we can taste over 2 weeks. I will explain it all in the email on Monday for anyone who's new to Drinks with Kate since we did that last time. But we'll definitely be having some fun with some Pinot Gris next week and the following week. So get ready. Enjoy the rest of your Pinot. Thank you, Zach and Jack. My Pinot Gris skins shoveling was pretty epic, wasn't it? My very intense face for that photo. Lovely to drink Pinot Noir from 2015 with you guys tonight. Have a fabulous evening, everyone. Alison, we'll see you when you get back. Lovely to chat, everyone, and take care. And I'll see you next week or whenever I see you again. Cheers. Where's my button? Thanks, guys.